Hello and welcome, Smart Gamer Live, the community spotlight audio check for those out there.
Check, check.
I'm assuming that people are still waking up as that are watching. Well, hey, my name is Zalen. I am part of this awesome community of guild and community leaders. With me, we've got a gentleman who was once asked if he had been drinking before getting a group invite. When he responded no, they declined the group invite. Apparently, he's better drunk, none other than Mr. Malice, the leader of Plague. Next, we have, we've got some names that just went away. Next up, we have a gentleman who has met every living president that is out there currently, and that would be Zeb. Mm-hmm. Wave hi, Zeb. And another gentleman whose community is so tight-knit, he had a couple people get married who even weren't playing the same game. And that's Poison Taco, the leader of Part-Time Heroes. And then another gentleman who has been a part of the same community for over 17 years. 7 of those years he was a GM, and that is Big Daddy Puka.
That's right.
As his group likes to call him.
That's his gangster name.
Big Daddy Puka.
Hey, that's what your people called you on the last stream, so
I don't. Yeah,
we're just gonna go with it.
They're weird.
They're your people.
In fact, I'm looking for a new guild if anyone. You guys are recruiting.
So if you want Puka in your guild, then there you go.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll have a Q&A at the end, so be thinking up of some questions for these community leaders. They can be serious or they can be crazy. I am, however, going to bring up the elephant in the room just to start with. Zeb, what happened to your beard?
It's gone the way of all things great. It had to disappear for a little while. It will be making its triumphant return in a few weeks.
Truth be told, you just didn't want to compete with Puka and his wonderful beard.
I was in good competition with Puka. Mine was pretty Communist Manifesto. It was ready. It was ready to walk.
All right, today's topic that we'll be talking about is the role of the GM versus officers and how they contribute to a guild/community. Are they different in guilds versus communities, or can they be the same? So the first statement/question I wanted to start off with, there is a school of thought out there that says the guild master versus guild leader title. The guild master title is not in favor, and some people say that you should be called a guild leader rather than a guild master because master degrades everyone else in your guild. Zeb, what do you have to say about that?
To me, I just call myself the guy in charge of when everything goes wrong, and I use the term GMs, but I don't actually say guild master, because I know people are sensitive to it. It's just a holdover from D&D days, when there was a game master, and that title kind of lashed itself onto online playing guilds. So to me, it's almost a non-issue. But if people want, then I won't say guild master. If people do want it, then I'll say guildmaster. It's to me, it's not important enough to me to make a distinction.
Puka, do you see yourself as a guild master, guild leader, or just Big Daddy Puka?
I prefer Supreme
Overlord.
Yeah, it's probably no. It's I think it's whatever term people are used to calling that position. It's really it's always kind of just been a position of like the buck stops here, in a way of like it's just trying to be the top of the chain, and hopefully a lot of things don't even make their way up there. It really all depends on just what organizational structure y'all have in place. A lot of times you just kind of act as a facilitator, and not really as someone who's delegating this, or as someone who is delegating that, not running around with your big mace of woe.
Poison, Malice, either of you want to weigh in on
in Part-Time Heroes? My official title is founder, in that I created the group and I created the structure for the group to function. And I will always be a founder, but we will always also have things like admins. So even if I step down however many years from now from my leadership duties, I will still be the guy that started it all. But that's separate from like official leadership capacities.
Malice?
And yeah.
Well, we use kind of such a layered system because we actually have a like a leadership council above guild leaders, and GM. The GM, we don't use GM all that much. I mean, we'll type it, but normally GM to me is game master, and it's usually that means you're talking to customer service, whereas guild leaders are that position that is running a particular guild in a particular game.
But aren't you just customer service in that you're in charge, and so you get to listen to everybody's problems and then fix them?
Pretty much, yeah. So, yeah, we're like my position is above and beyond that even. But yeah, we use guild leader for the position of people who are running the guild in a particular game.
So GMs versus officers within guilds or communities. Pook, I'll throw that to you first. What do you see as being the biggest difference between the GM role and an officer role, specifically within a guild? And then does that change when you go bigger toward a community standpoint?
Well, I'll speak from our standpoint. Essentially, officers are, I mean, they're the people that do all the work. When you get down to the nitty gritty of it, they're the people that are responsible for diffusing drama, hopefully for not even letting it get to the point of explosion in the first place, which is why it's important to have officers that, you know, can see these moments of tension within your players developing and will hopefully step in before things get to an exploding point where like, oh God, it's just a headache even thinking about it. I know everyone's probably dealt with them. And so a lot of those issues are, you know, issues where hopefully that they're not things, unless obviously if you see them, you're there at the moment. I think officers appreciate you stepping in, but it's more of it's a balance of delegation of roles. It's what responsibilities do you want them to have in the day-to-day task. If you look at it from the office, you know, it's like big picture and day-to-day, you know. And so your officers, I mean, really they are the movers and shapers of the guild, and you are just there to help them and the issues that they bring to you and the things that are just like, listen, we don't know what to do about this. And that's really why and a lot of guilds don't even have, like ours for instance, we do not only have one leader in that leadership role. So you know that can change, it can rotate. It really depends on what game's in there, and there's a lot of people that are able to step away and then return based off, you know, how real life is. So it really just depends on what is delegated to that position of officer from the position of leadership.
Yeah, I view it strictly as this: your officers are your tactical support, and your leaders are your strategic vision. Your guild leaders or guild GMs or whatever. Then, if there's another level beyond that, then they're responsible for how the ambient in your community is specifically. And how that fits into the roles of guild master, guild leader, and officers.
So, what are some things that your officers do for you that you just straight up don't do normally? Do they take on roles that or take on responsibilities that you as a
Yes.
GM do not?
Yes,
Like what?
mostly things that we don't have time for. I think will be the answer. You'll see a lot, or don't have the skills in particular areas.
Do you have something specifically anecdotal you can give?
Yeah, I'm terrible with technology. So when I get tech questions, I pass it off to my officers who are much more tech savvy than I am and in technology, as several of you are in the channel.
Do any of you guys use your officers differently than what would be considered a standard?
I would say that because of the layer, we in a way have kind of, I guess, two different concepts of officer. One is the council, which they're the voting body that is under me. That and those kind of fall into that idea um, of officer, but they're more the community officer as opposed to an in-game officer. In-game officers in Plague are usually very specialized. They have a specific task. They run recruitment, or they run resource gathering, like to make sure that everybody's supplied with certain potions or whatever resources for dungeon crawling or for PvP or whatever else is needed. And so each of them have very specific tasks, and they could be, people can go to them, but usually they deflect most like personal issues or anything like that quickly up the chain to the local guild leader, and if not the local guild leader, up to council. That just helps facilitate and allow people to focus on their tasks, and keep problems from just being kind of spread out all over the place, but to get a single point of attack and resolve quickly.
Poison?
I so far have a little bit of an unconventional system for building out officers. And this is based on feedback of previous groups I've either been in or I've run. Whereas if I have a leadership role that's needed, I'll make a post that other people can apply for and fill. And right now, it's more, we have positions that are more game specific. And we are also running more kind of like a mill sim kind of thing, with at least as far as Star Citizen is concerned. So on the mill sim side, we're actually going to have military officers, which would follow a stricter chain of command. And that is still kind of in development right now as we get more and better communication systems.
So how many officers is good to have? I'm assuming it will change for every single community versus guild. What do you guys normally try to go for, and at what point do you say, hey, we need more or we need less?
I would say a ratio of one leader or officer type of role for every 6 to 8 members is optimal. And the big thing you need to consider is not everybody is online all the time, so redundancy is always a good thing.
Planning is a very important for as a GM for all sorts of occasions, and your officers help fill the holes of that plan.
I've actually run a lot more loose before, quite successfully. And for us, I try to keep it, as far as officers are concerned, we try to keep it something to the tune of 1 per 20 members. But it all depends on what's been delegated to them and what the responsibilities are. But that has, again, I'm speaking purely anecdotal, but that's kind of worked again for us because of our recruitment methods, in that we're not taking in a lot of randoms. And so the diffusing of drama is much less for us, and so a lot of things can be. I found that we just don't have to worry about a lot of the other struggles that other people do, and it's been quite nice. And so you just want someone there to be present.
Yeah, similar in Plague is we run into the situation where if there's enough drama that it requires officers, guild leaders, and all that stuff involved, people are probably not long for it. And so, like Puka, we are pretty exclusive in how we recruit. We interview people. We go through a lot of vetting before we give them invites. Normally, sometimes we have dealt with like guild mergers and things like that, where we kind of take everybody, but at the end of the day, we really have our defined personality, and if you don't fit well with it, you either voluntarily depart or you find yourself being exited.
So, one of the biggest things that I'm hearing from all of you is that you operate pretty much on a ratio of officers to members of your guilds/communities. Is there
ideally, and I will comment and say that we have, like in the past, we have purposely stopped allowing the inviting of members before because we did not have enough leadership to support it. And it's one of those things where it's like you want members, but when you have it, when the members you do have are too new and you haven't had time to vet them for a leadership role, and even if they are quality people, it doesn't necessarily mean you want them in a leadership role. It's one of those things where you kind of have to put a halt on recruiting and letting people in. You want that all you can, but that's where the conversation that we've had before about alliances comes in. Your responsibility is to your guild first, and you've got to really focus in on making sure everything's running smoothly. And if you want to get bigger and do things on a larger scale, that's where alliances come in.
Yeah, I totally agree with the alliance statement as well. As when you want to expand and you really need, like, say, we're not what you call zergers. We're not rolling in. We're not going to just roll in 100 guys and come smashing through. And because of that, we tend to gather friends with other guilds, and then we use, when we need to, we can gather together and do that. But it also allows us to have our own cults of personality within our own guilds, our own leadership styles and everything like that, because people gravitate to those leadership styles, and we may like each other, friendship wise, but as soon as someone starts doing something they don't want, that's when you all of a sudden realize, oh, yep, that's a different leadership style, and that's why I'm in the other guild.
So as your communities grow and you get large, and let's say you've got 12, 13 officers, if you run out of specific things for them to do, are they literally just an officer in name to kind of help cull the masses? Or do you cap it at some point and say, 13 is probably just too many for us. I don't have enough things for them to do. We can handle this with how it is.
I'll take that. And for our particular structure, we have essentially set it so that once you have at least shown that you have the personality type capable of that, which is, generally a sacrificial mentality, or you are willing to give up of your own time to help others. And it's something that, you look for in an officer. But once you've demonstrated that you have that, and you have been an officer in the guild, and say we move to another game, or say interest dies out, that doesn't mean that you lose your qualifications, right? It just means that, like, hey, you no longer have that burden anymore. So enjoy doing what you were doing without the responsibility of the other things that were put on you. And for us, it doesn't mean you lose that title. It just means that you don't have that burden on your shoulder. And should that need ever arise, then that's where I would approach somebody and be like, hey, I got this burden to put back on your shoulder, and it's you having already been a part of the community and proven that you can shoulder that burden and are willing to. And then that's, someone might not be able to do it. And so that's why, in my opinion, it's good to have multiple people kind of on a floating rotation, because you're not going to pull somebody into a game that has no interest of even playing the game just because they're a great leader. They're not going to be in there like being an officer in your game, and they don't even want to play the game, So there is a balance of keeping people kind of on a rotation based off need. and desire. They've got to want to do it to help grow your guild in a game or maintain your guild in a game. And if there's no desire, they won't be great officers anyway.
Malice, I know you have a little bit of an interesting setup where you'll actually seed games with people, come alongside them, help them get going, and then kind of just let them go in the name of the almighty plague. What does that look like officer-wise? Do you have people that are kind of like your plant team, that they go in, they do this, and then they come back and they're just doing whatever? How does that look for you? Or is that your council?
Yeah, it's mostly my council, or at least part of the council. It'll be myself and council members to come in. Imagine we're like a franchise, and we go in and we're like, bring in the strike team. All right, we build everything, we get everything going, and then we start searching for someone who would be a good talent to step up and. Looks like they're planning on sticking around long term, and then we try to groom them to become the guild leader there, and then work with them to kind of help them define what they want and how they want to do their officers and things like that. Because at the end of the day, the officers in that game are their officers.
Poison, how do you do it? Are you guys just kind of a Zerg as a whole group game to game, or are you more along the lines of what Plague does in that you plant subsections of yourself?
No, we have specific goals of building into 2 games right now. We're kind of bouncing around back and forth between multiple games, just trying to find anything that sticks. And spoiler alert, nothing is sticking right now, unfortunately.
Feel your pain.
Yeah.
And we don't want to be a group that lives or dies based on one game, but at the same time, we also don't want to spread ourselves too thin right now. So the focus is 2 games, and then if there's demand for others, and if people want to build something in there, and I feel that they're capable of doing it, I say go for it. I just had a couple guys want to get a server in Hell Let Loose. They each pooled together the money to run the server, and unfortunately both of them got hit by real life, and they weren't able to kind of keep it going and everything like that. And I was like, hey, and they were actually pretty choked about not being able to keep the server going and get that game built up. But I'm like, hey man, I give you credit for trying. I like initiative, and I like it when people want to try these things. I'm just like, don't let that discourage you, but take the lessons learned and try again.
Zeb?
Well, my officer corps is basically the leaders of individual strike teams within the games. So let's say the game counts a group as 8. My officers would number 1 in every 8 players usually. Then I have some overall officers that handle broader issues, but typically they're strike leaders, and that's how we don't like the word Zerg because some people just don't have the organizational capacity to organize it in any better fashion. So they clump up together and they just run. But the need for strike teams is becoming more and more evident in today's more bifurcated society of games.
So let's talk new guilds for a minute, and anyone watching who has the random idea, God forbid they split off from you, but let's say somebody wanted to start their own guild or their own community. Obviously, they would name themselves the almighty Lord High whatever, GM something, and they would need to pick officers. Do you guys find it smart to pick your best friends to be those officers to start with, regardless of how dumb as rocks they might be? Or
No.
do you actively go looking for other people? What's your suggestions for people who might want to start this venture on their own when it comes to officers and guild leaders? Malice.
Give it time.
give it time. Malice, what you got?
Honestly, I always look at things of start small, you can always grow. At that point, there's nothing wrong with grabbing your friends because those are the people that are going to be your core group of people anyway. I mean, if you're just starting up, you're looking at 5, 6, 7 members. You're just trying to get things going, and then you're going to start recruiting. Having some loyal friends that can help you out just makes it easier. It makes things flow because you know you can trust them. They're not joining your guild to rob you or do anything like that, which, unfortunately in these days and age, Eve has really built this ruthlessness in a lot of players, and they're quite happy to join guilds and rob them of everything they have and then leave. So having some loyalty in that really kind of takes some weight off of the needs of the GM and allows them to have spread information a little bit easier too, because you can talk about it. You can go to dinner, you can do whatever. You don't have to be in game to have that communication.
I have a slightly different view, and the view is this: if you don't extend trust to new people, then you should never expect trust in return or devotion. And even though that policy makes me a target for the people that Malice was talking about, uh, if I don't know you any better, I'm going to trust you. And the reason is I respect and trust people that I work with, and it's more about the abilities than whether they're my friends or not. I really think that friendship and officer core should develop because of the guild, not because you're already friends and you do that. It's a strain on your relationship as friends.
I have I'll just tell you how I do it. So say you want to enter into a game and you have no structure of leadership whatsoever, but you do have members. You're recruiting, you're maybe spamming in chats, you're on forums, and people are coming to your guild. And you have some sort of structure in place, and you have some sort of organized events or times that your guild comes together to accomplish goals, whatever. Um, Eventually, you as a person are essentially going to be unable to play the game because you're spending all your time managing, right? Um, and there's two ways you can. Well, there's multiple ways, but there's several doing things. A risky way would be for you to just step back, um, and see who naturally steps up to solve the apparent problems that present themselves within your organization, by you not micromanaging, or you can instead look for the people that come to you with solutions, for the people that see the same holes and the same issues that you're trying to tackle, and they bring their own solutions to you. And you look for these people because they will pop up. They just naturally will. And if not, then you've got a great Zergling guild, a hive mind, and you can just send them to do whatever you need to do. But there will be people within your organization that want to help you solve problems, especially if they are observant enough to see your struggle with those problems. And these are the people that you want to delegate that responsibility to. But at the same time, you have to challenge them. You have to find their trust. It is very difficult with a group of random strangers, and that's why having a known variable, someone else. I doubt you're going into a multiplayer game alone with no friends and starting a guild. I doubt that.
There are people that do that.
Well, it's. I think
Been there, done that.
So, right here.
Wow. Okay. Well, I'm surrounded by them. But and if that's your MO, then you've kind of, I believe, got a plan in place when you're going into that, or something you're wanting to accomplish. But I don't know. In my opinion, I think it's best done when you come in with somebody, and even if your known variable doesn't want a leadership role, they can at least help you vet potential leaders. And when it comes to there are some very political games, and there are some games that have a lot of openness and ability for espionage, you just have to be open, or not open, right? You have to be careful with, what permissions you give where, and just have a valid reason for it. And it's not about trusting. It's like you don't give the keys to a castle to somebody you've known for 2 months. You just don't do it. And so that's where that vetting time comes in, and it all depends on what you have to lose too. People are going to put a certain amount of time. I mean, again, going back to Malice and comments about Eve, there have been we've all read stories about people who have slept in guilds for a year and a half, 2 years, to enact a position in leadership, to start from a point of espionage, and it's insane. And so yeah, I don't think
It is impressive.
yeah, it's awesome, but I don't think you starting it again. It's you don't keep the keys to your kingdom in one place, and hopefully the games y'all are in have systems in place where you can divide that all up, so that there is no one central point of failure, and you yourself, as the guild leader, have to be able to give up that central. You can't be the central point of failure either, and that's an important show for when you, as a leader, also are willing to give that up and put that and share that between multiple people. I think that lets your members show that you're not willing to be that tippity top. If someone compromises my account, the whole guild goes. Yep. No one wants that either.
So you brought up a good point there, is the tools that are within the games that we play that help us govern and help the officers do what they need to do. What are some of these most invaluable tools that you find, and what are ones that, as seasoned leaders, you would find to be helpful if developers got off their high horses and went, oh, these communities are important to our game, we should put this in? Zeb, why don't you start?
Well, I've been very critical in the past of many developers thinking of guilds as afterthoughts, and the truth is that it couldn't be further from the truth. Your longest members of the community are typically guild members who are within one guild or another, and the tools that are necessary are permissions and communication tools. Now, Discord has done away with a lot of the need for Discord, and programs like Discord, like Skype and the others, have TeamSpeak, and they've done away with a lot of the need for communication tools, but you're still going to need message of day, different layers of messages depending on what level of access you have in the organization and what you need to read. It's good when it's in game. It's less good when you have to create third-party apps or third-party systems to support your in-game guild.
Poison?
I would personally like the ability as a guild leader or someone looking over an application to see the history of a particular player, because if anyone is doing any acts of espionage, they can easily leave their guild and apply to join another one. Well, perhaps having the ability for me as a guild leader to see the guilds they've been in before, to be like, so that way I can kind of see a log of any groups they've left or joined over a particular period of time. And maybe that could also raise some red flags. For example, someone wants to join your guild, and you see they've joined this group and they've left it in a week. They join another group, they left in a week. They join another group, they left in a week. That means they're joining all these groups, and either they're leaving or they're getting kicked. You kind of go, why?
So more tools to be able to do player research before you let them into your
ranks. Exactly.
I actually sit on the opposite side of that. Not to step on top of you, but I think that a player has a right to their own anonymity within a game, and I would despise any tool that took that from a player.
Yeah, as a guild leader, I would say that I would love to have those tools, But as a player, I totally understand the idea that that is an invasion of their own personal privacy and their own
No, yeah, I would love
enjoyment of
those
the game.
tools, but
But yeah,
I don't want that.
right. I don't know, and it's. I mean, I do, but I don't. You know, it's like at the end of the day, though, I totally get where you're coming from. But following that same course of logic, I would at least like to see games use logs for functions within the game, because I want to know who goes in the guild bank. I want a full
Within the
log.
guild, within
Right.
the guild.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I want
absolutely.
full logs of everything that's been removed, added to the guild bank, who has grabbed anything that has permissions or permission restrictions. And that's something that a game like ArcheAge is miserable at. It has the worst permission system I've ever seen in a game, especially for one that is an open, ruthless game where espionage and all that kind of stuff exists. Having to be able to figure out ways around that and
Well, it's garbage, and it forces your players to segregate themselves into families.
right.
And then you have these cliques that exist within guilds that will share resources, and they will not share outside. And it's very detrimental to your guild as a whole because this garbage inventory management system is in place. But
I completely agree.
Yeah, I'll pick off of that too, Malice, and say that one of the hands down most important, and I think this goes for a lot of games. Me personally, I definitely find myself winding up in fantasy MMORPGs. Is when it comes to guild stashes, when it comes to guild vaults, having very robust permissions per rank. In other words, I want multiple ranks. I want to be able to say who can withdraw. I want multiple tabs. I want to be able to say this rank can withdraw from this tab. This rank can only deposit in this tab. I want that stuff. That way we have a certain amount that like you have to give in, you know. So say like for example in games we did that didn't have an automatic taxation system, we had guild taxes required, and we needed people to put the taxes into the vault, and we needed to know a log of who's been doing that, you know, because it's a requirement. You know, you give a little bit and we're all going to benefit from it. And these things are, oh goodness, they're a struggle, but they are, if you do them right, it's so easy, and it makes everyone's life easier.
WildStar was an excellent example of a really robust guild bank system and a good tracking system, and also had automated taxation, all that type of stuff.
Well, and I think it was based off WoW, and I think WoW's at a pretty good spot right now, as far as their management. And we've hopped back and forth between Guild Wars 2, and I'm pretty happy with where Guild Wars 2 is right now. I just think devs moving forward need to look back at what people have done and just ask themselves what's worked and what hasn't, and just be like, listen, I know it's a complicated back end database, but you're making far more complicated ones for your item and inventory. It's like, just take a minute and do guilds right, because it's everything. When you keep a community bound together and you're able to organize like that, that's what keeps people logging into your game and playing.
So would you guys say one of the most important elements of helping leadership do their jobs and keep the community / guild going would be the guild bank or vault or whatever form the game has it going? Would you all agree with that statement?
I don't know if it's absolutely the most important, but by golly, when it comes from a point of stopping espionage, everything is always centered around your resources, and that's where they live. And it can be, I personally have not had a lot of, if any, infighting over different members doing what in the guild bank, aside from, you know, people making comments like, well, someone says take of this and then I get it, blah, blah. It's like, whatever, but not real any fighting. But it's one of those things where it's like, that is your guild's resources. That's what everyone's pulling together for to be able to use. And so you do have to, you're responsible as a leadership and your leadership team for keeping that, making sure that's divvied out evenly and making sure it's not being abused by certain members.
Yeah, in our case right now, we're actually doing a little bit of speculation because in addition to Camelot, we're also building into Star Citizen, which is where all itemization in Star Citizen is going to have a physical footprint. So all items in the game have to be physically stored somewhere. And when we do get organizations in the game, we're going to get things like warehouses and plots of land that we can store things on. So then the question becomes, okay, so how do we store, our FPS weapons? Are we going to have to standardize our rifles so that way they're readily available? Everything from ship components to everything we do to make repairs. And then right now we're kind of thinking of how are we going to keep track of it all? Also, how are we going to fund it all to begin with? But yeah, itemization is going to be a big task, both in Star Citizen and Camelot.
Okay, real quick, off the top of your head, the game that you guys have played that has had the worst guild management tools for its leadership? Malice?
I'll do it at the same time, Malice.
Arcade.
Arcade.
As much as I love that game, yeah, miserable.
Zeb?
Arcade as well.
Poison?
I didn't play Arcade long enough to hate it as much as you guys.
Oh, the game is great. The guild management is terrible.
Never have I ever seen a game that was better in alpha than it was in release.
So this is a crap on Arcade video
yes.
cast here today.
The
so.
reason we're
Yes.
focusing so much hate is because the nature of Arcade is so political and so about the interorganization of players. To follow that with such crappy management systems, it just creates so much unneeded stress and anxiety about solving problems. No other game has, no other, I would say, fantasy MMORPG that I have played personally has forced players to work together in a manner like Arcade and encouraged proper cooperation. But to follow that up with such garbage tools for managing resources, it's just unacceptable.
It's an afterthought, like I said before. A lot of game developers think of guilds as unnecessary or afterthoughts, and you can tell when that happens.
So is there a fear that the two big ones on the horizon here, Camelot Unchained, which is obviously of particular interest to this group, or even Star Citizen, are we worried about the guild management structure within those games?
No, not for either of them, because the developers of both recognize that strong communities are necessary for their games, and they've either already put a lot of work into supporting them, or they plan on doing it in the future.
Well, and the reality of my experience is I put no stock in what people plan on doing in the future. Like, if they cannot launch these games in place, then after 2 months, nobody will ever come back. And you have to look at yourselves and look at your own gaming history and look at how the percentage of games that you have really, really returned back to and taken your guilds back to enforce. You don't go back. You really don't, because you're so jaded.
Yeah, we burn bridges.
You're so jaded by these negative experiences, and because you push until your communities can't take it anymore, trying to put up with this mess. And so if they don't come strong with these community management tools, you're just going to peace out after 2-3 months. You're just like, you know what? We're not going to do it anymore. Something else is going to come out. We're going to try. This is the past 7 years of MMOs. This is what we've all been living with and struggling with. And yeah, this is our world of hate, is combining some great games with crappy management tools and some crappy games with pretty good management tools. And it's just like, ah.
The hope and dream, at least in Camelot Unchained in particular, is that Mark Jacobs did Dark Age of Camelot. Dark Age of Camelot had really solid tools. It had really in-depth. I mean, it was complicated. You had to be basically a programmer to set up your guild. But when you did, I mean, you could have a like 25 different separate ranks or something like that. It was
But I
something
think that was kind of a weakness of UIs at the time.
Oh
And
yeah,
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
that's what a
Well,
lot of people struggled with.
Dark Age of Camelot is literally back end is just a mud. It's literally you're writing in Lisp, like, and so you want to create a macro, you actually write it out like you're programming in a mud. So I mean that's the same with UO and all games of the era. It was just common.
So we've now obviously dumped on ArcAge quite a bit, so let's transition to the happier side of games. And as leaders, and Kiss My Juicy's doing a shout out to Malice here. They want your babies, just so you know. Little tangent there. Which game have we played so far that has had the best management tools for you as officers and or guild leaders? And more importantly, why? What were those tools and why do you classify that as the best?
I'm going to give a special shout out to, as much as they had a rocky launch, Star Wars The Old Republic had the best system for organizing guilds for launch day that I've seen out of any MMO, period. Because if you played The Old Republic around launch day, they had this system where you could set up your guild before the game was out. And then what they did was they were like, okay, the game is launching, and you can take everybody on your guild list and automatically all join the same server. And they also kind of they separated the guilds based on server, based on location as well. So it wasn't just dogpiling everybody kind of in a free-for-all. And the way in which they released that game and spread guilds out across the servers, so you didn't have overflows and server queues, was very well done, despite all the other flaws the game had at release.
Poison, let me get a little bit more specific here with the question. What in-game tool made that game the best as far as guild management?
They had a tool specifically built on the web end that you were able to funnel your guild through into the game on release day.
Okay. Puka?
That's a great question. I am going to
Draw a
see.
name
The
out of a
problem
hat.
is, you have some rose-colored glasses on a lot of things, and so really trying to nitpick. I'm gonna go kind of easy on it. I'm gonna say Guild Wars 2. I will not give them their initial. I will asterisk of what they have formed into. Where it is a modern title. I'll asterisk that too, with with a fairly robust system. I would ask for more out of their. I know I've been kind of harping on vault systems. I would ask a little bit more, but everything else, I'm quite content with. And as another option would come out, I mean, they just kind of create another checkbox with the ranks, and it's pretty satisfying to just kind of be able to go through an on-off. It's very similar to we all kind of deal with Discord, to be able to go through an on-off, and it's not overwhelming, because I think everyone, like, not to change to VoIP, but everyone would agree here, TeamSpeak has the best permissions.
Yep.
But figuring out TeamSpeak's permissions, we'll harken that back to like very much permissions, right? It's very like you can do everything you want, but you need a master's degree to figure it out, So the ability of breaking things down to a checkbox and having just about everything you could ask for. I'll stick with Guild Wars 2. It's very. I think they have a very solid system. It'd be a great system to mirror and augment moving forward.
Okay. Zeb.
Okay, well, my choice for guild tools has to be Shadowbane, And Shadowbane, the developers knew that the guilds were going to be the primary movers and shakers in the world. There were going to be solo players that would hunt down players individually in the world, but most of their action was based on territorial control and item possession. And so their system was bifurcated again. That word, I'm sorry. It was bifurcated in several fashions to allow for multi-stage guild leaderships.
Okay. Malice?
Honestly, I would love to see a system like Dark Age of Camelot, but as Puka said, not using a master's degree to to do it. I love the fact that you could just invent more ranks as you needed, that you could really get down to the nitty-gritty of permissions. I like having like individual titles. I would like to be able to go, hey, you two are our PR guys and you're our recruiters. You actually need this list of permissions. You could be our HR department, but I don't want all officers to be able to just kick people at will. I want the HR department to be able to do it, and different things like that. I like being able to have that specific down as deep as you can go, permission selection and different ranks and very customizable ranks. And so I really have fond rose-colored memories of Dark Age of Camelot's guild stuff.
And I will say a lot of those features is kind of what made me pro Guild Wars too. My biggest issue being, like I think you're limited to 10 individual ranks, which is like, So, I mean, Dark Age just let you go and go and go. I think I don't know if there was an actual limit, but I don't remember.
I don't think you could.
It's been too long.
I don't know if there was, but something sticks in my head that it was 25 or something like that. But who cares at 25?
It's one of the things that I hate when devs are like, we can't give you all this, so just eat up data. Like, it's not that many database entries, guys. Like, just let it go. Like, I'll buy you a new server just to run the database if you want. Like, for my guild. Like, if you just put it there, we can address it, and I'll let you just give me the database.
Gimme. We're all a bunch of power-hungry micromanagers. All right, so are there any questions from our audience there on Twitch for any of these guys or for the group as whole? Go ahead and stick those in there now. And while we do that, Poison with Part-Time Heroes will be the Guild Spotlight of the Week or Community Spotlight of the Week. Poison, go ahead and give me just a couple of cool little facts about your group.
Let's see. We've been around, I think it was, January 2013. We were around for about a year or two when after Battlefield 4 and Guild Wars 2 ran their initial course, we kind of dispersed a bit. And then around a year and a half ago, we got back together again. The only problem is we brought the group back together and we got no games to play.
Seems to be the struggle for everyone right now.
Tough, man.
Got a band, no concert hall, huh?
Pretty much.
Well, you guys are lucky today. There are no questions for you. Puka, I assumed that somebody from your community would ask something silly of you, but no one is asking. So
there's a couple in here, but I don't know.
So if you're watching, we are moving the bulk of the community spotlight to a Wednesday video that will be released on YouTube every week. This stream will now happen every week on Sunday around this time. The members may change, but we'll still be here. And we'll have some other videos that will hit YouTube randomly in the next few weeks that will focus on different areas of content and some different fun things. If you are interested in joining us, you can jump into our Discord channel. You'll find all the information in Twitch on the page or at the bottom of the YouTube video. Thank you for watching. We'll see you all next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Felicia.